Hey, Spiky, Jonathan, and Florian, and anyone else who may be able to help me out here. I've got my river asset, and I've added reflections, and I'm having a couple of things that I need to troubleshoot, and I'm out of ideas, so I thought I would come ask you guys. I don't know that it's going to matter. I just caught the stream, and Kent has said no to procedurals. Which may mean this whole asset's going to get tossed out anyway, which is fine. I specifically chose this asset because I wanted to learn procedural textures better than I know right now, and I feel like I've accomplished that. So that's good. But I do still want to ask you guys about these reflections because I've had some things come up and I don't really know how to deal with them. So real quick, the setup is I have my texture chords going into a noise texture, going into a glossy BSDF to kind of distort the reflections. I wanted them to kind of distort so that they look like they're moving with the river. I've got that plugged into the shader to RGB node, and then that plugged into a lighten node because that was the only one I could find that kind of gave me an effect that looked good. And I think it looks pretty good from certain angles. Eevee's reflections are kind of weird. I couldn't get anything to work with screen space reflections. I could get reflections on the river, but I couldn't distort them with my texture because that would just smear them wildly everywhere, and it didn't look good at all. So they were just perfectly still in the moving water, which also didn't look good. So I had to use a reflection probe to get these. There is the obvious problem that with that there's a very sharp cutoff. I don't know if you guys can actually see it. Try to get in there where it is. Well, right here there is a cutoff that's pretty sharp, and at certain angles you can tell that it's just cutting off there. But I think that might be okay. The bigger problem I'm having is from this angle, you get very bright hotspots in the noise texture. You can see them here. And yeah, at certain angles, they're pretty awful looking. And so I'm wondering if there's a way to solve those. I tried messing around with adding in ways to lower the contrast of this effect because I think it's the dark pixels that are creating those really bright hot spots. The problem was anything I did to kind of lower the contrast completely muted the reflections altogether. I also think the reflections are a little too clear, but if I dial up the roughness any at all, they just vanish. Like anything above 0.1 and they're gone. Or just, I mean, they're still there, but you can just very barely see them. So it's pointless. So I kept that at about 0.085, I think is what I had. Yeah, so I'm just kind of curious if you guys have any ideas to troubleshoot that. If we use the probes, is it better to have one giant probe covering the entire river? I can't imagine that it is. Or do we just want to put probes like by the house and maybe by each of the bridges? Yeah, just spitballing for ideas. If you have any, please let me know. Yeah, I think that's all I had. Appreciate any feedback. Thanks.